In a world where talent is evenly distributed, but venture capital is concentrated in coastal silos, smart startup money is heading for the Midcontinent. Welcome to the Midcon Markup, a podcast that uncovers the inspiring stories of our visionary tech entrepreneurs and the investors who believe in them. I'm your host, Cody Merrill with Cortado Ventures. Listen, learn, and make your Midcon Markup. All right, welcome to another episode of Midcon Markup. Today, we are fortunate to have one of our youngest, brightest founders in our portfolio, John Halbeck.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So, John, why don't you start things off by telling us about what you're working on with Motive?
We are a website platform for auto dealers. Those that are in the automotive space may know what that means. For those that are not, you can kind of think of us as analogous to that of Shopify, but again, just for auto dealers.
Why is the car buying experience so awful?
It's a simple question with not a great answer. I don't think that all car buying experiences are awful. I think that oftentimes the experience that people have at dealerships can be quite bad. And unfortunately, that gets blamed on dealerships. Oftentimes, people think that dealerships are out to get them or purposefully misleading them. Really, that kind of brings me back to the problem that we solve for dealers, which is there's a massive amount of systems complexity at a dealership. To sell a car, a dealership has to have 15 or 20 tabs open on their computer with different pieces of software that they interact with, which means ultimately that is passed down to the consumer in terms of how disjointed that experience is. We're trying to unify that shopping experience to be more seamless for the consumer and the dealer. But when it comes to why people have bad experiences, oftentimes people will go to the store or go to the dealership and maybe some information about the vehicle on the website is not accurate. Maybe it's price or wheel configuration or color or whatever it might be. And they get to the dealership and that's not accurate. And they feel misled and they think it's the dealer's fault, but ultimately it's not. It's a result of the systems complexity where, you're really compiling, 20 different data sources and different pieces of software to, create a single inventory listing. So the fact that the price is wrong is probably more likely due to a systems error as opposed to a human being trying to manipulate you. And so, where we come in is we simplify a lot of that experience for the dealership and in turn make the shopping experience better for the consumer because, the dealership is not having to piece together so many different tools and plugins to make their retailing experience work.
Got it. So why don't you walk us back to your childhood? What was that like? Where did you grow up? What was school like for you? What did you want to become? And how did you develop this penchant for entrepreneurship so early?
Grew up in Ardmore, Oklahoma, which is about an hour and a half south of Oklahoma City, right on the border of Oklahoma and Texas. I knew what I wanted to do almost immediately. As soon as I started having sentient thought, I knew I wanted to start a company. I can remember thinking that very young, like before I was 10, that this was ultimately what I wanted to do. So it was very clear to me, what sort of avenues to pursue. School itself wasn't incredibly helpful to me, but I was very interested in financial markets and how large businesses work, how enterprises function, those things. So I read a lot of literature about that when I was growing up. When I got into high school, really sort of have your first exposure to autonomy. You start driving and having thoughts that are your own and original things that you can create. And so I started my entrepreneurial journey in high school, was an inventory photographer at a dealership group in Ardmore. And through that experience, I learned how to take great photos and sort of create content and things along those lines. And I was able to sort of parlay that into a lot of freelance work. I ended up making websites for businesses on the side. So I'd make websites for hotels or hair salons or country clubs or whatever it might be.
So how are you making these websites? Was this like Wix, Squarespace? Were you doing custom static pages? When did you learn how to code? Did you learn how to design? Like, what skills were involved in this?
There was no, I cannot write code, right? So these were all just like, out of the box Wix or Squarespace sites. By no means did I have any technical skill. Really, it was mostly, maybe I had an eye for what looked good and how a website should be structured. I had an insight maybe into that user experience and how the user experience should be. So maybe that's why I managed to create so many websites for various small businesses. But yeah, by no means was I actually writing any code. But it was with that exposure to working with small businesses, understanding their pain points, and then really understanding how websites work and how they're operated, that led me to combine that with my knowledge of the auto industry that I gained from, being this fly on the wall, taking photos of cars every day, which, by the way, as a high schooler, getting to photograph 400, 500 cars a year is like a dream because you get to drive them all. And so I fell in love with cars, and it's just like this natural merging of two passions that formed this business.
Okay, so you developed these different skills. You learned about websites. You were helping different businesses launch websites. You were photographing cars. You became a gearhead. You were driving all these cars, and you knew that you wanted to be an entrepreneur. At what point did you decide that, hey, I can marry all of these things together and I can solve a sequence of problems for dealerships that will create a transformative business solution for them?
It's a great question. So really, I was doing freelancing work for auto dealers when I was in college, briefly in college, and through that experience, I realized that the way that people shop for cars is fairly awful. The technology that dealerships use is equally awful. And the websites that dealerships have in particular are horrible to navigate. They don't look good. And it's funny because this is something that's really important to people, their car. It's like one of the largest purchases they make in their life next to their home. It's incredibly emotional. People love their car, they name their car, and yet this experience that should be this delightful thing, this life-changing thing where you get a new car is really awful because from the second that a customer starts shopping for it, they're inundated with these awful consumer experiences. When I had the idea for the company, the idea was just, let's make a dealership website that looks good. Because surely enough, that can be done. Why not? And so maybe some naivete there. And so our initial sort of thesis was like, if we can make a dealership website that looks better than the others, then we will be able to create a good business. And it wasn't until we got into the problem space really deeply did we start to understand that the problems that dealers face stretch across a number of different departments, a number of different business systems. The problems are quite wide in their exposure. And we learned that anywhere you can throw a stick in this industry, there's a massive, multi-billion-dollar problem to solve for consumers and for dealers. So it was really exciting because initially we started out with this really simple idea of let's just make something that looks good. And it quickly became oh wow, we actually have an opportunity here to change how people shop for cars. And that realization first occurred whenever I saw a statistic that said over 90% of consumers that buy a car at a dealership see that car for the first time on the dealership's website, which is profound when you think about it, because what that implies is that over 90% of car purchases start online. And so if our goal is to make car shopping great, which it is, then the way that we can have the most exposure to solving that problem is by powering the shopping experience for dealerships, because we can impact as many consumer experiences as possible through that mechanism.
Timeline-wise, you were doing all of this stuff in high school.
Right.
Did you launch this business straight out of high school? Did you go to college? Did you launch it in college? Just
what is your life timeline like here? Because there's not very many 24-year-old founders that have VC funding in this part of the country, at least.
Yeah. I guess, so this is not my first company. I actually started a software company when I was in high school with a couple of other folks. It basically failed. We did all the things wrong that, like if you go look up a list, like what are the top 10 reasons why startups fail? Like we failed because of all of them, not just one of them.
On that list, where did not talking to enough customers rank?
I mean, that is one of the core ones. Like we're like sitting there, like sticking our finger in the air, like pontificating and opining on what people want. And if we'd spent like half an hour talking to anybody, we would have figured out everywhere we're failing. So it was like, that was one of the core regrets there. I still think the business could work today were it to be executed properly, but neither here nor there. So I had some exposure to software development in high school through that, and we raised a little bit of money, so it wasn't just some garage thing. And then when I went to college was when that company sort of petered out, and I went to the University of Tulsa, and I was pretty miserable because I think a lot of people go to college to determine what they want to do with their life, to maybe seek it out. But for me, like I just knew exactly what I wanted to do, and the world is changing so fast around me, and I sort of looking at this 4-year timeline like a big, dark cloud in front of me. It's like, why do I need to be here? Particularly because my entrepreneurship professor has never started a company before, which was like kind of insulting that like this person is telling me how to start a company, and like I've started more companies than she has, and I'm a freshman in college. And so I dropped out of college, and I said, look, I'm going to give myself a year to figure something out, and if I can't, then I'll go back to college. Like I have all my life to sit in a classroom. I do not have all my life to have zero responsibility, and I can just devote myself entirely to some enterprise. So that was when I started getting really deep into working with dealerships.
What did your parents say?
My parents are awesome. They, like, if I told them I was going to go strip naked and run down Times Square, they'd tell me they love me and go for it, I mean, so it was not an issue.
What do your parents do?
Both my parents are geologists. So they are experts on rocks. Okay.
Just open-minded, awesome people.
Scientific, analytical people. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anyways.
So I left college thinking, okay, I give myself a year. And that was when I really dove into the freelancing, doing all sorts of marketing and advertising type work, website building for auto dealers. And that actually pretty quickly became very sustainable for me. And so like 2 months after I dropped out of college, I was basically set from a financial perspective, which was quite nice. And so that it was just affirmation to me.
How were you acquiring clients? I mean, they weren't hiring professional firms to do their websites, or the professional firms didn't have the industry expertise to know how to make it look nice. Like,
tell me and we'll both know. I mean, it really is just luck. I knew a couple of dealers through working at the dealership I did in high school, so I had some connections there. And yeah, I think I just provided a good service, and it was worth it. But in that regard, that was when I got the idea. It was like late 2019 after I dropped out for this company, and I didn't actually end up starting it until mid 2020, but the cogs were in motion by that point. So almost immediately after leaving college, this company was set into motion.
There's a big difference between building cosmetic, nice-looking websites, helping take pictures, and then saying, you know what, this is not just a cosmetic problem. There's critical organ failure in this industry, and I want to get in there and I want to rewire how everything is connected, and then I want to combine that with my eye for aesthetics, and you seem to just have an intuitive sense for user experience. That's a big difference converting from a service business to a high-tech, scalable tech product where you want to achieve maximum growth.
Yeah.
How did you make that mental leap?
A couple of things that are worth mentioning. One, the service business experience that I had was so invaluable because it taught me about client service. It taught me how to have clients, how to treat them well, how to retain them, how to lose them gracefully, how to maintain relationships and reputation. It taught me all those things, and particularly when you were doing like freelancing work or working for clients that are utilizing you for advertising and marketing, you're pretty important to them. And so when things fail, it's on you, and it stinks because it's so important to their business and you made a failure, or you made a mistake there. So that was really kind of helpful in building the business because I already figured out how to provide exceptional client service while doing something very hard. And frankly, software is just so easy to support clients with that it was like, oh, I've done the really gnarly part and the really messy part. Now I like have this expertise on how to manage clients well like that. But when it comes to the actual, like, I've gone from just like making simple websites that look good to like providing a really robust piece of software that's enormously complex. That I can take no credit for. In fact, when we first started Motive, we got off to a slow start because...
Who's we?
Well, me, really.
Okay. You kept saying we, and I was like, what's going on here?
No, it was really just me in the beginning.
Yeah.
And when I started Motive in the beginning, I didn't have anybody technical with me. And because I had that experience making Wix websites, I thought it would be easy, some naivete there, or arrogance, or both. And so we got off to a slow start because our initial product that we built was, an absolute disaster. It was horrible. I wouldn't even necessarily call it a product. And we got our first dealership and we launched it, and their site was going down maybe every hour or two, and it just didn't work. It wasn't good. And so eventually...
What was it trying to do?
Well, like exactly what we're doing now is what it was trying to be, the MVP of that. But it was just poorly developed from a technical perspective. And so it failed because I didn't realize what it takes to build good software. And
so did you outsource that to a dev shop? Did you have a cheap buddy who knows something, or a technical co-founder?
I didn't have any technical co-founder. It was foreign contractors that I'd found through one of those, online freelancer websites.
Oh, so you didn't even get a warm intro from a trusted shop? Were they Indian, Polish, Ukrainian? What was it?
No, they were the Serbian brothers.
Were they highly rated on Fiverr or Upwork? You're a smart guy. It's not like you tried to choose it.
I don't want to blame them. I don't think what they did was bad. I think it was just poorly managed. I didn't know how to direct people to build software.
Yeah.
I needed somebody that could do more of that pipeline of taking software from idea to development. I thought that I could understand and manage the pipeline with no experience, and obviously that couldn't happen. And so that failed. We lost that client after the first week. And so I sort of went back to the drawing board. We're like running out of money. So I like got rid of the contractors, and I put up a job listing on Angel List. And it was really simple. It was like, I like wrote a letter to like the person I was like really a dark period. It was like, hey, we need help. We have a platform that's like, doesn't really work. I'm looking for somebody technical to come on and work with me directly. You'll be paid meaningfully and you will get equity in the company. And it was like, no, it was not like, here's the duties and requirements. I was like, it was like a plea for help. And luckily I found my now co-founder, Brett, who lives in Seattle. He applied to the job, and I don't know if it's serendipity or fate or whatever, but the working relationship that I have with Brett is one of the best I've ever had with anybody. It's remarkable, and he is an absolute genius. He's literally a rocket scientist. So he is a self-taught programmer. His prior endeavor, or he's actually a trained, educated rocket scientist, aeronautical engineer, astronautical engineer. So he had the engineering understanding of like how things are built, how they are put together. And so he came on board shortly after the failure.
Why does somebody with those credentials who could be making 300, 400 or more,
don't tell him.
Why does he reply to a plea for help from a solo entrepreneur in Oklahoma trying to help auto dealers sell product?
I've asked myself the same question. I haven't asked him that question, but if I had to guess why he chose to work with me, why this like genius, 180 IQ, excellent operator chose to work with me, is I think maybe the motive is and was and we are kind of exactly what he was looking for. Something small where he can have big impact. So maybe to some people it would be a put off, but to him, I think it was quite exciting to be able to like come in on the ground floor.
So he's highly motivated by equity.
Correct.
And he wants to be a part of a long-term journey. And then I imagine that he found you to be very genuine and relatable and humbled through real world experience, learning things the hard way. And all of that was appealing to him. And the reason I'm harping on this is, as a fellow non-technical founder, it's so hard to even understand what it takes to win a technical co-founder.
Yeah.
And people ask me all the time, and it's like idiosyncratic reasons and different circumstances, but there's some universal truths. And it seems like for him, it was a variety.
I would, to go back and edit something there. I wouldn't say that he was motivated by equity per se. Rather, I think he was motivated by ownership, whether literal or figurative. I think that maybe he wanted he was attracted to the idea that, I'm this guy that has this, sort of rough vision for something that needs to be built. And I'm humble and I failed. And like, I am like 100% going to let him take the reins and go. And I think maybe that was intriguing to him. Brett told me that when he was doing interviews during that period, like a lot of the people, were hiring at the company size he was looking at, or like just, people that like have an idea and like it's not really clear if there's like any funding or if it's actually even a real company yet. It's like very early. And so I think when I came to him and said, look, like, we're like decently well capitalized, we've got runway, and I've got this idea and I just need your help to build it. I think that might've been attractive because it's like, okay, well, this is a serious person.
Feasibility.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that non-technical founders, first-time founders who are trying to recruit that technical co-founder need to understand. So you have to empathize with them. Like, yeah, they might want to help you. They might believe in your idea, but they have bills to pay. But they have like life obligations. Like, you have to give them a feasible ask. It can't just be some pie in the sky thing. You have to demonstrate to them what you've done to de-risk this opportunity.
I also think too that the technical people are taken advantage of often.
Oh my God.
Because it's like, the business guy is going to come in and like make all the decisions and you're going to be stuck in your corner coding and like you just take this and just do your thing. And so I think maybe there's some hesitancy from technical people about that scenario where it's like, what's my involvement in the business? Am I just going to be this like, a cog in a machine writing code for this, business guy that doesn't understand it. I think it helped that, I really wanted a partner. It wasn't like I wanted somebody to write code for free. It was like, I'm willing to pay you and also like give you some ownership and, work with you directly. I think maybe that was the right way to do it.
Back to the timeline for the creation of the business. So we segued into how you won the technical co-founder battle.
Right.
Now, let's go back to the battle of how you take a fairly successful services-based concept. You initially fail with your first product attempt with overseas developers. You recruit a technical co-founder, but now you actually have to execute and you have to deliver for customers, build a reputation. How do you do it?
For us, we got started pretty slow. Thankfully, there were a few dealers that were like nuts enough to come on board with us in the very early days. Like you couldn't even filter by model on our website in the first iteration.
Did you win them because they liked you and there was a personal connection? Were they not knowledgeable about other services that existed elsewhere? Or was their website just so shit that there was that their house was on fire and you had the promise of a bucket of water?
Yeah, it was the latter. I mean, I think that the people that came on board early were those that recognized that their website stinks, and through the sort of skeleton of a product we had in the very early days, they saw what it could be, and they realized that it'd be better. I think also, contrary to popular belief, the automotive industry is not outdated and it's not behind, and auto dealers in particular are incredibly technologically forward. I think a lot of innovation in the world economy starts in the automotive industry, and so auto dealers in particular are very welcoming of innovation because they're always looking for a competitive edge. I mean, you are essentially selling a commodity. So when, if you're selling corn, if you can move 2 bushels of corn faster than the next guy, that really compounds. And so dealers are always looking for something that gives them an edge. And so I think that it was attractive that we're a new company and they have an opportunity to shape something and in the way that they operate. And so I think those 2 reasons were probably why they chose to come on board with us. And also we had personal relationships with them. So that was easier because there was trust.
And you had established those personal relationships because of your prior industry experience, not because you got some family handoff?
Correct. Yeah, because I worked with them in the past. They knew that we were fairly competent. I wouldn't say we were competent, but we're not total screw ups, so it wasn't going to go terribly.
All right, and then that's how you got your foot in the door, but then you had to deliver. And in order to get referrals from there, it's all contingent upon successful delivery and meaningfully moving the needle, having metrics that shows that you're helping them gain a competitive advantage.
Kind of. So going from 5 to 20 was equally hard as going 0 to 5. I don't think there's any differentiation. I don't even know if having any clients helped us go from 5 to 20. I mean, I think the 20th dealer might have been just as hard as the first. But then after the 20th dealer, it started to get a little bit easier, not because of, we're able to deliver metrics to people that are showing, hey, here's the before and after, because those things take time to generate those metrics, and we'd been around just for a few months, so we didn't have much as far as case studies to provide because no dealer had been live with us for more than a year.
Okay, but going from 5 to 20, you didn't have personal relationships with all of them. So were you cold calling?
Yeah, cold calling, knocking on doors, hounding people, do you know any dealers? Pure luck.
Asking for referrals from current clients?
Correct.
Or do you have buddies? Do you have dealerships?
Correct. Yeah, that's a huge source of business. That's the easiest way for us to get business.
Was it hard for you to deal with the rejection of cold calling?
Not at all. No.
So one of your superpowers as a founder is that you are immune from getting down from rejection.
I would say the hardest part about cold calling is the first 5 words. That's what's really hard. Because you have to convince them not to hang up within the first 10 seconds. And then after that, you're pretty much in the clear if you get through the first 10 seconds. That was the hardest part. The saying no, that was sort of, you go into it expecting a no or not even talk to anybody. So it's just cool to talk to somebody.
Okay. Best advice for managing the first 10 seconds to have substantive engagement on a cold call.
I have not made enough cold calls to give dictatorial advice. But what I will say is, I think being very transparent with the fact that you are cold calling them has really helped. Not trying to have any game or trick with the call, actually approaching it I am inserting myself into this person's day, and no matter how awesome my product is, it's an inconvenience to them. So I think just opening it up and saying, look, I want to tell you why I'm calling. It's because I have this product. Is now a good time? And if they say yes, they'll probably say yes in an irritated way, but that's enough for you to go and give your pitch. And then sometimes their eyes will light up, and you can kind of tell, and they'll really let their guard down and start talking. And then most of the time that doesn't happen. But again, I'm not we didn't do much cold calling in the grand scheme of things. Maybe hundreds of calls, but not thousands.
Okay, but there was a hodgepodge of ways that you went from 5 to 20.
Yeah.
And then what was the tipping point at 20 that has allowed you to grow to, what are you at now?
130.
as of end of November.
Correct.
Okay. 2023.
That's correct. What really helped, and maybe I didn't initially realize this at the time, but in this industry in particular, I'm sure it's true for if you sell to hospitals or whatever, maybe there's really large hospitals that people care about. But as we got dealerships that are high volume, sell a lot of cars, other dealerships see that as validation and oftentimes want to move forward with us because of that reason, because other dealerships use us. It really, I think, builds a lot of trust. It shows that we can execute. It's like, hey, if we can do good work for XYZ dealership and they sell 3 times more as I do, then clearly they're okay for me. And I think a lot of the reasons we got rejections in the early days was because, they didn't know if we were like a fly-by-night kind of company. And so seeing that we've got like actual dealerships that have a real business using us was really helpful in getting the deals closed. Now that's just in getting the deals closed. What was really transformative, what was a transformative realization for us is that our business, I think maybe unique to us, there's probably some other businesses that have similar situations, but we have a pretty remarkable flywheel that I'm very thankful for, in that dealerships and dealership operators are, as I said, always looking for an edge, and they're always looking at their competitors. They're always looking at what other dealerships are doing to get an idea. And so I imagine that operators spend a lot of time looking at other dealerships' websites for maybe just pricing discovery or to see what tools they're using. At the bottom of all of our dealerships' websites, we have a made by Motive logo. And I'm grateful that our clients allow us to put that there. It means a lot to me, and particularly because that is really driving all of our new business. That little tiny logo on the bottom of the website, because when other dealers go to our customers' websites and see, wow, this is an amazing platform, this is better than what I have, they reach out to us and request a demo, and that's how we get the vast majority of our new business. So that was really like an amazing realization when it's like, okay, we have this flywheel where the more sites that we launch, the more dealers see us in the wild, meaning the more demos we get, then the more sites we launch, the more dealers see us in the wild. And it's this flywheel that I think has just recently started to turn very slowly on its own without much having to turn it on, by us.
Okay, so first 5, brutal. 5 to 20, almost as brutal as 1 to 5. And then you made the discovery of inserting the Made by Motive button. And then from there, the vast majority of your sales process has converted to inbound leads.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. How much aggregation is there nationally for auto dealers? And do you have a parallel business development track that you're pursuing to engage in the big game hunting of the aggregated conglomerates along with the crowdsourced inbound from your Made by Motive button?
There is a lot of consolidation in the dealership world. Over the past couple of years alone, so many stores have been purchased and absorbed into larger auto groups that maybe have 10, 15, 20, 30, 100, 150, 300 stores in their group. And so I don't have the exact metric as far as how many franchise dealerships are independently owned versus how many are a part of a larger auto group. But I would imagine that at this point, a significant chunk of them are actually a part of a larger auto group, which is awesome for us because typically the decision-making structure is basically the same at auto groups, except whenever we penetrate an auto group, we have the opportunity to work with the other stores in their group. And so oftentimes we will make a connection with a general manager at a store within an auto group, and I think we do a good job, and the other stores want to come on board. And so that's also been a significant bellwether for our growth, is that the deal size can increase pretty quickly once you start adding in the other stores.
You figured out a lot of things on your own throughout this process, and I have a huge amount of respect for that. You did that very young. You weren't just waiting around for people to hand you things. But I imagine that you've had some mentors that you've been able to cultivate along the way, that you've been able to benefit from the hard lessons that they've learned over the course of their career. Maybe who are some of those individuals? How did you get in contact with them? How did you convince them to take ownership in your career success? And then how have you managed to make it a valuable experience for them so that it continues to keep them engaged?
I definitely I stand on the shoulders, for whatever that's worth, of many people that have helped. And there's like a handful of people that, I would say, had they not, entered my life, I would not be anywhere close to doing what I'm doing now. I'd probably still be toiling around making Wix websites or whatever. And one of those people is Rod Whitson, who is sort of this local socialite, but also this remarkable person. And he, at the time, I was very overwhelmed with starting a company, and I'd reached out to a CEO consulting firm to help, and they connected me with Rod, and Rod called me, and I said, "How much do you cost?" And he told me a number, and I said, "Okay, I'm sorry, I can't do that. It's way too expensive." And so I hung up on him, and then he called me back, and he's like, "Hey, no, hang on, let's just talk." So we met up and talked about where I want to go with the business, and Rod just has this really clear way of breaking down problems and making them seem less intimidating. And so all of the things that I was worried about just became it was like a breath of fresh air to talk to Rod. And so,
what was his industry experience?
Rod has been in banking and media for I think almost his entire career. But I think most recently he's been helping other entrepreneurs. So by the time that I had reached out to him, he had exposure to, dozens of other CEOs that have the same problems. So when I'm telling him I have these really unique and special problems because I'm special, he's like, "Yeah, no, everyone else has the same things. You're not special. Here's how you fix them." So that was his background. And so really Rod is really important to me because, I don't think that it feels like I'm just being dragged around by Rod, really, because everything great that's happened to me and to the company has been a direct result of action that Rod has taken to help move us along. And I consider him a good friend, but he connected us to you, to Cortado. He connected us to our first angel investors. He helped me form the company. How do I start a C Corp? What should the structure be? All of those things, he had direct involvement in. So if there's a fourth, fifth Beatle or whatever, that would be Rod for sure. Cause he's not day to day in the company, but he's had almost as much impact as anybody else.
At what point in time did you know that you needed outside funding to achieve scale from angels, from VC firms? What was the round timeline like? And you have one famous investor on your cap table, and it is not Cortado. So I'd be interested to hear that story, and I think the audience would as well.
I don't know if there was a moment I was like, "Oh man, I need to raise institutional capital for this business." I think I just always wanted to. So it's always just a given that I would do this in this manner. I find business in general very intriguing, but I find startup businesses really where my passion is. So, I wouldn't have it wouldn't have been as fun for me to do it any other way than to raise institutional capital. This is the arena, this is where the fun is. So that was always part of the plan. As far as how that all came together, I have the initial angel investors are wonderful and very supportive. And I think that not enough credit is given to angel investors because they take on a significant amount of risk with their own personal capital. And they make these decisions solely based on their judgment of character. No, ultimately, when you're making an angel investment in a company that has nothing, you're just like hoping that the guy you're investing in isn't a dork or a fraud or whatever, and that's like the best you can do. You have nothing tangible to grab onto, and it's like angel investors that fuel the entire innovation economy, because without them, I mean, VCs don't do those types of investments rarely. You almost get laughed out of the room unless it's something really unique. So they serve a really important role in that process, especially because it helped me understand how investors look at deals and how that whole process pans out. So I think our initial angel round went fairly easily. It was like right at the middle of the pandemic, so it was all over Zoom. But beyond that, it went okay. It was a bit painful seeking institutional investment for our later round, just because you're still all over Zoom and you're having to talk about this child of yours with people that oftentimes criticize it.
So it was over Zoom because it was in the pandemic,
middle of the pandemic, right? And it's like a lot of times in VC meetings, they'll like give you some obvious criticism of your business, and it's like they sort of approach it as if it's this novel critique, and it's like,
yes.
And it's funny. You guys didn't do this, but you were very respectful. But it's funny because that whatever VC you're talking to has never started a company before. Because when you're running a company, I think Zuckerberg said this. It's like running a company is like waking up every day and getting punched in the stomach for 16 hours and then going to bed and doing it again the next day. And I find that to be fairly accurate. And so it's like when somebody critiques you like that with some obvious criticism that's like not insightful, it's like, yeah, okay, I heard that before. This is not
cool, bro.
Yeah, right. And so that was like kind of tough over Zoom because it's just like very transactional, and I didn't feel like I had a great connection with anybody. Thankfully, I got connected to you guys. We met in person, and that really helped because you're local here. As you mentioned, and we do have a celebrity investor. I've been a big fan of Jason Calacanis' Twist podcast for a long time because he's got these really obscure interviews with founders of amazing companies in the very early days. He's got like an interview with Travis Kalanick, like when they had just left San Francisco with Uber. It was like just expanding outside of San Francisco. And it's like this hour-and-a-half long interview. And it's so candid because Travis hadn't been media trained by then. And, there's like a very real insight into how the company started. And he has all types of interviews like that with great companies. And they all have like 2,000 views. So I thought I had this like secret. And then I learned like a year ago that Jason also has this, like the most popular business podcast ever. And I just didn't know that. I thought I had stumbled upon this, secret thing. And so I reached out to their team directly.
Cold outreach, no warm introduction.
Cold outreach, no warm introduction. And that is if there's any VCs listening, even though, probably all of the submissions you'll get are not great, it is quite nice when you have a form on your website to fill out. Like whatever litmus test you think it is that you force us to hunt down your email, it's not appreciated.
Just be a normal, functioning, empathetic organization.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, you guys are money salesmen, so like I should be in the the position of power there. So let me fill out the form instead of having to hunt down your email. But I met with Jason's team, and they have a pretty unique operation there. They have a syndicate with a ton of members in it, meaning they have this sort of investment pool that pitch startups to get investment from, and in addition to that, they have their own fund as well. And so it was really easy getting in touch with them because they made it easy to reach out, and went through that process from both with their syndicate and with their fund. So invested from both of those areas, and it's been great because particularly Jason has this syndicate where it's got this amazing sort of menu of intelligent, smart, unique, varied, diverse people that make up this syndicate. Like, I spoke to one the other day who's like an engineer on trains. There's people from all over the world that are involved in various industries and hold various jobs and have done various things. And the syndicate is kind of anonymous. So whenever we got investment from it, we didn't really know who the underlying investors were in the syndicate. But then like slowly over time, they like reach out and say like, hey, I have this connection for you. And it's like, oh, this guy like is an operations lead at Tesla, or, you know, this guy owns a few car dealerships. And so over time, we've had this like trickling of like discovering who our investors are, which is kind of cool because they're all really unique, and it's fascinating learning about their backgrounds and stories. So with Jason, the benefit is you get access to their team, but also you get access to all of these, you know, wonderful individuals that want to help, almost like angels. How many unique check writers are in that SPV? I do not know. I do not know how many unique check writers there are. If I had to guess, I think there's probably like 40 or 50 total. The ones who have relevant connections, do they typically avail themselves? Like, why does it seem like there's people who have money invested in your business who could help, and it's not just like super transparent to you that it's like, hey, there's an opportunity that's good for both of us? Not all of them have reached out and made themselves known. I think partly that's like the benefit of the syndicate, is that you get to sort of be a passive, anonymous investor in companies. And so not all of them have reached out to me and made themselves aware to us, but occasionally like I send out, you know, investor updates and I'll get a reply from somebody new, and it's like, I'll look him up. You know, he's like a manager at, you know, a large bank in Singapore, you know, like really interesting people. And so I think they're just busy. Maybe they don't want to, you know, make themselves known immediately, but I kind of like the mystery of not knowing, because it's like every now and then I'll figure out somebody new and see maybe they have something they can do to help us. How much exposure do you get to Jason himself? Very little. Yeah. I've only met Jason once. But he knows your name, would recognize you, would respond to your email? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, he does respond to emails. Yeah. I've emailed him before. I'm allowed to do that. And I imagine that you want to reserve that only for the highest level of the only questions that you want advice or connection. Yeah. The only time I've ever emailed him is for you at Cortado. You guys asked if he could come speak somewhere, and I emailed him about it. So I use my social capital. I feel bad. I use my well, you know, he's busy. I don't really need to talk to him. Yeah. And there's really a value there. His team can take whatever I need to get to him. But I use my social capital for you guys. So, you know. Well, it's greatly appreciated. Thank you. Yeah. Now I'm all out. Well, hopefully we can give you some more money. You can do some great stuff, and then you can have more social capital spend with them. Yeah. You told me you were going to ask me about the worst VC email I've ever gotten, or VC meeting. Yes. What are the stupidest things that VCs have said to you about your business? Worst meetings? Let's hear the horror stories. Can I name names? I don't know if that would behoove you going forward, but if you feel so inclined, go for it. I won't name names. I enjoy meeting with VCs if they've founded companies before, but sometimes you can really tell when they haven't, and it's kind of frustrating because, you know, they're like, used to be like a investment maker, and it's like, okay, you have no operating experience. Worst. Yeah. and so I would say that the funniest meeting that I had was we had a good introduction meeting, and it got escalated to the partners, and we had a meeting with the partners, and then like shortly after the second call, we got the turn down notice. And I think the turn down reason, before I just describe the turn down reason, there's a philosophy. I think this is a Y Combinator philosophy, but it's believe the no, don't believe the why. And usually when people like turn you down, they'll like give you a reason why, but like the reason probably just made up. Like maybe they don't really know why they said no. They just didn't have a good vibe, which I would just wish that people would just say no instead of making up some reason, because it just throws you off when you're rejected for an investment and they say, oh, it's because your industry isn't large enough. And it's like, well, that's not actually true. You know, so it kind of throws you off as far like, where can I improve? And so in this particular case, this VC said, you know, we're going to watch you closely to see, you know, how the automotive space evolves to see if it can become a real product category. And I thought that was pretty funny because, you know, some of the largest companies in the world our product categories in automotive. So that was the funniest one.
Different entrepreneurs respond differently whenever an investor says something stupid about their business. Did you write back and say, this is why I think you're wrong? Like, you can do it tactfully. How did you reply to that?
I don't think it really behooves anybody to, get tiffed over email about those sort of things, or like try to convince them otherwise. Because if you recognize the no is true, but the why is not, then like trying to rebuke the why is kind of fruitless, because you're just going to force them to like make up another reason because they didn't really say no for whatever reason they told you. So like I don't try to counter anything. Usually I just say like, okay, thanks, or I don't reply. In this particular case though, I don't think I could help myself. So I replied like, yeah, I'll keep you posted as we work to make, automotive a feasible category for businesses. So I don't know. I think maybe that bridge might be burned, but we'll see.
I mean, that's a lot softer than emails that I've sent. It is really obnoxious when people haven't walked a mile in founder shoes and they say stupid things. That's just like,
yeah,
of all the potentially valid reasons to reject this investment, you say just complete nonsense.
Yeah.
And now that I'm on the VC side, I think always be professional in your email, and I think that I have been, but I do respect when a founder says, okay, I heard what you said, but this is why I think you're wrong. I will keep you apprised of my progress. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that there's any one right way to do it. That was an interesting anecdote. Believe the no, but not the why.
I mean, I don't know if you're involved in that part of the pipeline, but interviewing people for a job is kind of a similar thing where, person's great, maybe you don't move forward with them. You don't want to say like, I don't think you're a good culture fit in the email, but like you got to give them a reason. You can't just say, no, I'm sorry, I don't want to hire you. So, I mean, I understand why people make up whys for no's, but I just find it kind of like, it's like, okay, like just be like, this is a serious thing. Like I'm raising money, like you don't need to go soft. This is like, I'm asking you for money. So tell me really why you said no so that I can improve that. And if there's not a reason, then just say that.
And then have you ever had substantive whys to the no that have then given you a roadmap for what it looks like to get to a yes?
Never. It's always been like surface level. Like I don't think I've ever gotten a good feedback from a no.
If you were a VC, how would you reject a company? How transparent would you be with the why?
I would be very transparent, because I know how like infuriating it is to receive some fake why. It's like obvious to the entrepreneur that you're like made up a fake why. It's like truly obvious. So like I know that's frustrating. I would be very transparent. Although I don't know, as an investor though, I haven't done that. So I don't know why I would reject a company. So I don't know what I would say in that case. Ultimately, it's like, if you have actionable information to give the entrepreneur where it's like, hey, I actually know a lot about your industry, and like I have this friend who's the CEO of XYZ, and like he said this is a bad idea. Like, okay, that's a pretty good why. In fact, actually, I think I've gotten no's similar to that, where it's like they talked to somebody and got turned off. Like that's helpful. That's a real no. So like maybe those are helpful.
Good, great. Well, we look forward to seeing your success with Motive, and I'm sure at some point in your career you'll have the opportunity, if so desired, to be on the other side of the table.
Never.
You just want to operate?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot more fun operating, and I look forward to rejoining you on your side of the table.
Anytime, buddy.
All right. Well, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much, John.
Thank you.